First, I want to make you aware of our non-discrimination policy statement. Caltrans will make every effort to ensure non-discrimination in all of its services, programs, and activities, whether they are federally funded or not, and that services and benefits are fairly distributed to all people, regardless of race, color, or national origin. And for more information on Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 Caltrans, please visit our website, and we will also put the link to that in the chat. Okay, and before we jump into our content, I just want to take a second to thank you all for being here today. This webinar series is part of an overall enhanced outreach and technical assistance effort Caltrans is providing to our partners to provide resources, tools, and skills to successfully compete for federal competitive funding. We received a lot of great feedback on our first session, in which we had successful applicants talk about their best practices. If you missed it, the recording of that is available on our website. Highly recommend checking that out. And today we will be learning about some federal requirements and resources. Now let's take a quick look at our agenda. Today's meeting is scheduled for 2 hours, in which we will hear about the following. First, we will be introduced to the Caltrans Office of the Federal Liaison. Then we will hear from the Federal Highway Administration about match requirements. Then the U.S. Department of Transportation will share some resources. And lastly, we will learn about Caltrans local assistance resources before next steps and closing out the session. And with that said, I will hand it over to Ryan Greenway, our Caltrans Assistant Federal Liaison.
Okay, just getting situated. I think everybody can see my slide. Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. As Vanessa mentioned, my name is Ryan Greenway. I'm the Caltrans Assistant Federal Liaison. And today I will be introducing you to our team. I'll provide a brief update on our Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or I'll call it IJA for the rest of the presentation, implementation efforts. And I'll go over some IJA resources, outreach, and technical assistance we work on, and hopefully will help you be successful in pursuing competitive federal grant opportunities. Mostly I'll focus on our website and our IJA bi-weekly newsletter. So here's our team. I'll just talk about some of the work we are engaged in. This includes, we coordinate the development of federal policy positions. We coordinate outreach to key U.S. congressional offices. We respond to congressional inquiries and track major transportation-related federal legislation, as well as coordinate engagement, strategy, and vision with our internal and external transportation partners to support implementation of the IJA legislation. So if we can be of any assistance as you pursue federal funding or just have questions, please reach out to our team and we'll do our best to assist you. So now I'm going to go briefly into IJA implementation efforts that have been going on since the enactment of the legislation. So since IJA's enactment, the California Transportation Agency, CalSTA, and Caltrans have been working closely with our transportation partners to implement the legislation. The IJA Transportation Implementation Working Group, or we'll call it the Working Group, which was kicked off in December 2021, comprised of state and local transportation agencies, the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, and other transportation stakeholders to implement the transportation provisions of IJA legislation. Additionally, Caltrans staff have been leading 12 sub-working groups to have more in-depth discussions on specific policy areas and to develop action plans with policy recommendations. In November 2022, we published our first edition of our IJA policy narrative, which details Caltrans' priorities to use the new transportation funding and planned actions to implement the law. We also launched our IJA biweekly newsletter to share IJA information to transportation partners regularly and promptly. And then last spring, the sub-working group finalized the remaining 5 action plans. So that's just a quick little overview of some of the implementation efforts that have been going on. So now I'll be focusing on IJA resources, outreach, and technical assistance our office leads or are engaged in. So our office co-leads the IJA Transportation Implementation Working Group in partnership with CalSTA. Since 2021, we've held 14 meetings. We've had speakers who discuss IJA updates, implementation efforts, and best practices you all might find helpful. Our next meeting is being planned for late August, September. So please reach out if you'd like to receive an invite for future meetings. If you are on our IJA biweekly newsletter distribution list, you will automatically receive an invitation to that. Also, if you have any special requests, questions, or if we can support you in any way as you seek federal funding, please reach out to our office. We also provide fact sheets for federal discretionary funding programs that you might find helpful. Also, the Rebuilding California website is also a great resource for federal and state funding, which we help keep updated as well. There's also the CalSTA IJA implementation website. It offers resources and materials related to their efforts to implement IJA with California transportation stakeholders, including the IJA sub-working group action plans I mentioned, and meeting materials from our IJA working group that we co-lead. And then there's the Office of the California Federal Liaison's website. This is a great resource, which I'll actually pull up and I'll walk through briefly for you. So now I'm going to talk about some helpful resource documents our office prepares that might be useful to you. The first is our IJA annual policy narrative, highlighting the significant progress that CalSTA and Caltrans have been working with our partners to implement the legislation. The next annual update will be November 2024, so please be on the lookout for that. We also distribute our IJA biweekly newsletter to share IJA information with our transportation partners regularly and promptly. This is a great resource as it includes current and upcoming federal grant funding opportunities, webinars, resources, and more. I will walk everyone through the one I just sent out yesterday. And if you haven't received that, I'll show you how to sign up. There's a link in the PowerPoint and on our website. Now I want to mention 2 resource documents we prepared last year in partnership with FHWA and our safety program to assist local, regional, and tribal governments in applying for $5 billion in competitive funding under the Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A, program to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. And the one on the right is how Caltrans can support successful awards as they pursue Safe Streets for All action and implementation plans post-award, including guidance, strategies, resources, and tools. Also, there's still over $3 billion available for future funding rounds, so please reach out if we can assist you or help guide you to the right department on seeking a letter of support as you pursue these valuable funding opportunities. And then lastly, I want to highlight our newest initiative, which Vanessa eloquently stated earlier, the Caltrans Federal Grant 101 webinar series our office developed with our partners this year to assist local and regional transportation partners and tribal governments in applying for competitive federal grant programs under IJA. This is our second session in our 4-part series. Our last session back in May, we had, I believe, over 400 attendees, and I hope you will find this session and the remaining sessions helpful to you as well. I also want to provide my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I will now, in this side of the presentation, I'll pull up the website to show you some of those resources I spoke about. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think it's showing here. So this is our federal liaison website. I mentioned some of the activities that we're engaged in. Here's the link to contact us directly through email. This is a section on the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act that we host and we update. It includes valuable resources, many of which I think some of the speakers will probably talk about in their presentation, so I won't go over those, but this is links to our policy narrative that I mentioned. And then there's also information on the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, funding for that as well. And then this is probably the most useful, which is if you're looking for discretionary grant funding opportunities and technical resources, excuse me, there's a list of some of those resources I'm sure are going to be spoken about later today. I will just highlight some resources. Obviously, local assistance will be speaking. There's a good resource on their website. The fact sheets for discretionary grant funding programs that we update and prepare that you can go through and look at. And then the Caltrans Office Strategic Investment Planning, if you're looking for letters of support or partnership opportunities, that would be that resource. And then our news, we have our Caltrans 101 grant webinar series, some of our flyers, our newsletter, how to sign up for it as well. Some of our past presentations that we have prepared and provide that service throughout California to our partners. And then switching gears over to our newsletter. So this went out yesterday. The first page, we send this out every 2 weeks. The first page is usually a snapshot of our implementation efforts, funding amounts, current awards that have come into California, highlighting all the great work all of you do every day. Then we talk about anticipated awards, so you can see what's coming down the pipeline on announcements, active notice of funding opportunities with links and the dates, so easy to find. And then we also highlight here for the strategic investment planning, our current call for Caltrans letter of support and partnership requests. There's 2 right now, and the due date is coming up. So if you're interested in these programs, please reach out to them for more information or your district representative. And then we also talk about upcoming IJA and Inflation Reduction Act notice of funding opportunities and provide the links and lists on anticipated opening dates so you can plan ahead accordingly. And then we also provide some newsworthy items of what's going on in federal legislation or IJA or the upcoming reauthorization that we'll be working on over the next year and a half or so. And then lastly, at the end, we have our resources and technical assistance. So plenty of links and good information to help you as you navigate successful grant funding opportunities. Our website's also on the link and some of the other items. And then our federal liaison contact and myself is on here as well. And I think with that, I won't answer any questions right now, but that will end my presentation today. I'll hand it back to Vanessa, but I will stay for the rest of the webinar and answer any questions at the end if there's time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. If anyone has questions for Ryan, please post them in the chat for right now. But for time purposes, we're going to move on. Our next speaker is Bob Eatman with the Federal Highway Administration, who will talk about match requirements. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm going to share my screen here. Just let me know if you can see the web page.
We can see the web page.
Share the presentation. Okay. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. As Vanessa mentioned, my name is Bob Eatman. I work with Federal Highway Administration at the Resource Center finance team. We kind of support all of our different division offices across the country on various different types of financial aspects. And the division office reached out to me and asked if I would talk about some of the match requirements that Federal Highway has and its many nuances. So I'm going to talk today about federal share. So when we talk about match, there's two different parts of that. We have the federal portion and then we have the non-federal portion. So the first thing we'll talk about is federal share and define that. I'm going to show you where you can go out and find federal share requirements. Then we're going to talk about cost sharing and matching. So now we're going to be talking about that non-federal share that's going to be that you may provide to a project. And then we're going to talk about where we can find those requirements. We'll also talk about the different types of match that can be used, because cash is the primary way that we do things, meaning that you expend funds. If you have a federal award, whether you're a state DOT or you're a local government or a nonprofit, and you have a federal award, when you expend funds on that award, you're spending local or state dollars, and then you're going to ask for reimbursement from Federal Highway. That's the normal process. But there are other types of match that can be provided, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about where to find the FHWA guidance on non-federal matching requirements. So let's talk about federal share. So while federal funds participate significantly in surface transportation program, as was mentioned, IJA, our most recent federal authorization for highways, provides about a little over $40 billion a year across the country for roadway infrastructure. And ever since the very beginning of kind of the highway program, which goes back to around 1916, there's been an expectation that states would contribute and participate in the program, meaning that the federal government isn't going to pay 100%. There's an expectation that the states would participate in that. So when the program began, Congress felt that the states should have a monetary interest in the program, and that's when matching requirements were established. In the early days of the program, the federal share was 50%, and now the standard federal share, and we'll talk about different types of federal share we have, but the standard, most normal federal share is 80%. So of 100% of a cost of a project, 80% can be federally funded, and then the remaining 20% would be paid for with non-federal funds. Today, the federal requirement doesn't just apply to state DOTs, but we now have a lot of other recipients or subrecipients that deliver federal awards, and so these federal share requirements apply to both state DOTs as well as our other subrecipients and our other recipients that we have out there, like local governments, nonprofit organizations. So this isn't an all-inclusive list of all of our programs on the screen here, but I kind of wanted to show that federal share is dependent on the type of program that you're talking about. So generally, and also I want to remind everybody that federal share is established by Congress. They write the law. So IIJA, our current highway law, was written by Congress, passed by Congress, approved by authorized by the president, and that's our transportation law. So all of these provisions for federal share are what's in our law. It's not something that Federal Highway just makes up. It's in our law, and so we have to implement the law. So these are the different federal shares that we have. So in our law, 23 United States Code, which is the codified part of our highway legislation. Section 120 is what provides the statutory requirements for federal share. So program and grant managers, you should understand where you can find information on where what the federal share is going to be for your program or for the potential program that you're going to apply for if you're applying for a discretionary program. So you can see here, if it is a discretionary program, you need to look to the notice of funding opportunity or the federal fact sheet or any resources that Caltrans may have for discretionary programs that will tell you what the federal share is. But the federal notice of funding opportunity or the federal fact sheet will tell you what the federal share requirement is for our discretionary programs. For our formula programs or for our regular highway programs that Caltrans administers and our state DOTs administer across the country, those are the standard federal share is going to be 80% federal, 20% non-federal on non-interstate roadways, and then 90% federal and 10% non-federal on interstate roadway projects. And not all of our funds qualify to be used on the interstate. So the 90% may not apply to all of the funds, but it is dependent on, the 90% is dependent on location. So only interstate projects can be at 90-10. So you can see these are all of our, and I've used abbreviations, and I'm going to show you here in a minute where to go out and look at federal programs. So for the sake of the slide, I put abbreviations, but I'll show you where we can go out and find what those abbreviations mean. But these are our standard programs. For example, NHPP is our National Highway Performance Program, and STBG is Surface Transportation Block Grant. These funds are administered by Caltrans, by the state DOTs primarily, and they can subaward, Caltrans can subaward program funds to local governments for as subrecipients. So those are our standard programs. Those are at 80% or 90%. Then we do have a few 100% programs, but these are mostly federal programs, with the exception of rail highway crossing. So that's a safety program that's set aside out of our highway safety improvement program, and that can be funded at 100%. But that is a program that's administered by Caltrans. And then we have our tribal transportation program and our federal lands programs and territorial programs. Those are all at 100%. And then we have our ER program, or emergency relief. That's the standard share of 80% or up to 100%, depending on if we're using the funds for permanent repair projects in the first 270 days after a declared disaster. Then it could be up to 100%. And then after 270 days for permanent repair work, not emergency repair, then it's going to be the standard federal share. So those are the basic requirements for Federal Highway Administration's federal share. So now, kind of what the title of this presentation was, is the many nuances. So now there are things that can change what those standard federal shares are. So think the 80% or 90% on our regular federal aid projects. The standard federal share is 80% on a non-interstate project. But then we can have what's called sliding scale. And sliding scale's been around for a long time. It's basically provided for states that have a lot of federally owned land. Most all of those states are going to be in the western part of the United States. And a state that has 5% or more of its land that's owned by the federal government can receive up to 95% federal share rather than the basic program share of, like, say, 80% that we just talked about on the previous slide. So California does qualify, and based on the federal share percentage, the sliding scale in California could be on an 80% project, could be up to 88.53%. And so the thing to remember, though, if you look down below the 4 bullets there, not all programs qualify for special rate adjustments. So, you know, the 88.53, that primarily is applicable to the formula program. So the regular federal aid program that Caltrans administers, the 88.53 does not apply to a lot of the discretionary programs, and I'll show you where we can find that information on our website here in a minute. In addition to sliding scale that can make adjustments, we can have up to 100% federal share for designated safety projects, and you would have to go out to the law in 23 United States Code 120, and it would tell us, and I'm going to show you somewhere else where you can find that information, but it's going to tell us what types of safety projects qualify for up to that 100%. 100% for innovative delivery methods. It's equal to or less than, so that means that it doesn't qualify like on designated safety projects. If you identify safety projects and it meets the requirements, it can be 100% funded. The innovative delivery methods is up to 100%, but it could be less than 100%, but still greater than the 80%. And you would have to look in 23 United States Code 120 for that information. And then workforce development, that's for, you know, job training and your employee workforce development. Certain projects can be up to 100% for workforce development. So as I mentioned, not all programs qualify for special rate adjustments. So where can we find this information? So I provide this slide so you can use the QR code to jump out. This also has the actual web address and then just a link here. So I'm going to show you, jump out to this. Hopefully it pulls up on the screen. So this link, it jumped out to our Federal Highway Administration website. I'm going to show you how to get to this page without going through the slide. It's very easy. So if you come to our home page, which is highways.dot.gov, and you just come to the middle of the page, we have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. If you click on this link, it'll take you to our main page that covers the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or IIJA. I'm not going to go through all of these different sections, but two places that I want everybody to be aware of is under the funding section for competitive grant programs, similar to what Ryan had just spoke about at Caltrans, the resources and the different links. This is the Federal Highway Administration kind of chart that shows you all the different competitive grant funding programs that we have, and these links will take you out to the federal pages. It gives you the program description and then what type of recipients can apply for these various different types of competitive funding. I'm not going to go through all of this list, but this is also where you can come out and find NOFOs for these particular programs, the current ones, as well as NOFOs going back, however far back those programs existed. Where I want to point you to, because we're talking about federal share, so if you come to this fact sheets page, we have a list of all of our programs, and these are all of our federal highway programs. Primarily, it's our formula programs. There are a few discretionary programs, like you can see, Safe Streets and Roads for All. We have a program down here, our Wildlife Crossings pilot program. But some of our programs may not have a fact sheet here, so that's where you would have to go back to that competitive programs list that I just showed you and then go to that page, because some of the fact sheets may be on our US DOT, the United States Department of Transportation webpage, and not on the Federal Highway webpage. But where I want to show you is this federal share fact sheet right here. So if you come here, and I'm not going to read through all of this because this is kind of like what I had just talked about, but basically this is a summarization and a lot easier read than going out to the law in 23 United States Code 120. But this gives us all of those provisions that I just talked about, where it can provide sliding scale and innovative delivery methods. And these are all the descriptions of what each of those means. What I want to do is jump down here to the chart. So here you can find every program that Federal Highway has. So these, and if you look right here, these are our federal aid apportion programs. So these are basically the programs that are managed and administered by Caltrans. Some of these could be subawarded to subrecipients. So some of you that are not working at the state DOT, these you may need to understand what the federal share is. Then we have some of our advanced apportion funds. So these are funds that are not out of the Highway Trust Fund. So Bill IIJA actually has some additional funds that are programs that were awarded that were outside of the Highway Trust Fund, which is the normal formula process that we follow. But where I wanted to show a lot of people, a lot of the folks here on the call, is down here in this other highway related programs. Here's where you're going to find all of our discretionary programs. So for example, RAISE, Safe Streets and Roads for All, infra. And you can see here, this column here is the sliding scale column. And so you can see sliding scale does not apply to Safe Streets and Roads for All. It's a flat 80%. So it's 80% federal, 20% non-federal, and it can't be adjusted. That's the federal share is 80%. So just another resource where you can go to find information. So I'm going to jump back out here to slides. So now that we talked about federal share, now let's talk about the non-federal share. So this is cost sharing. What's defined as cost sharing, 2 CFR 200.1. So cost sharing means the portion of project costs not paid by the federal government or paid with federal funds or contributions unless authorized by federal statute. And this term includes matching, which refers to required levels of cost share that must be provided. So federal highways programs, like I just showed you, we have a required level of cost share. So there's a required non-federal match. So we have to follow 2 CFR 200 requirements for cost sharing in 2 CFR 200.306. And then in the cost principles, there's a section called contributions and donations in 2 CFR 200.434 that we also have to follow. And that's basically identifies the allowability of cost sharing or matching and contributions and donations. In general, if and like I said earlier, cash is normally the match that we see. So, you know, and we work on a reimbursement basis. So for example, you incur $1,000 of costs on a contract, you submit, and it's an 80-20 project. So you pay, you being either Caltrans or a subrecipient or a non-state DOT recipient, you pay the $1,000 with your local or state funds. And then if it's an 80-20 project, you submit a bill to Federal Highway or you submit a bill to Caltrans if they're the pass-through entity for $800, which is the federal share, and Federal Highway reimburses you the $800. That's the normal way match works. So that $1,000 bill that comes in has to meet the cost sharing requirements here. So they have to be verifiable from a recipient's or subrecipient's records. So it has to be in your financial records. They can't be included as contributions for another award. So you can't double dip. You can't get reimbursed for the same cost by 2 different awards. They have to be necessary and reasonable. So that means you have to look at 2 CFR 200 subpart E, which is the cost principles, and determine if the value and the cost is necessary and reasonable for the federal award or for the project. They're not federally funded under another award. This kind of goes back again to the double dipping unless it's authorized by statute. And they're provided for in the approved budget when required by the federal agency. So if you're applying for a federal grant or you're awarded a federal grant, you're going to have a budget, and the costs or the match that you're going to be using has to be identified in that budget. And then it has to conform to other applicable provisions in 2 CFR 200. So now I'm going to jump out and show you where you can find information on 2 CFR 200. So I'm not going to, of course, go through all of 2 CFR 200. A lot of folks feel like it's overwhelming 2 CFR 200, but I just want to show you that it's really fairly simple to navigate, and it's written in a way that's pretty easy to understand. So I was just talking about 2 CFR 200, and I was in subpart D, which is where post-federal award requirements are. So if you receive a federal award from Federal Highway Administration, these are requirements that you should make yourself familiar with, is the post-federal award requirements. And so I was talking about cost sharing or matching right here. And you can come in here, and that slide was kind of, that I just showed you, was kind of a bolded list of what this paragraph B is. And so this gives us all of the information on, okay, if we are going to use cash, then that's pretty easy. We can think about that, but we're going to talk now next about the common sources of non-federal match. We can also accept other types of match other than cash, like a third-party in-kind donation. So that would be a donation of something, for example, right-of-way or property for a roadway project. If that's donated, we have to include the value of that in the total cost of the project, and then we need to determine what the federal match is, and then some of that value or all of that value could possibly be used as match. But that's what would be called a third-party in-kind donation, and this talks about how we value contributions and services. So if your project is going to do something other than a cash match, then there's a lot of kind of strings that you have to follow, and rules that you have to follow, and strings attached to allow you to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, you also have to have what's called a tapered match agreement, which is something that's not very common, that we don't use very often. But for the most part, I just wanted to show you that you can come out here and find all the information that you need to know in 2 CFR fairly easily. So this is the post-federal award requirements, kind of follows the steps of what you might do in a project. And then the cost principles is another area which I highly recommend you all be familiar with. So if you're going to incur a cost on a project and you want to know, is that cost allowable, you can come in here and make that determination. So with that, I'm going to come back in here. So now let's talk about common sources of non-federal match. So as I mentioned, we have state and local funds. So that's your cash match. So in my example, you incur $1,000 of cost, whether it's paying your employees or paying a contractor or a consultant for work on a project, and it's $1,000. You use your state or local funds to pay that bill, and then you submit for the federal share to be reimbursed the 80% from Federal Highway Administration. You can also have third-party cash donations. So let's define third-party really quick. A third party cannot be a recipient or a subrecipient. They're not third parties. What a third party is an entity that has maybe a benefit to the project, or it helps them in some way, and they want to donate cash to the project. Then that cash could be used as non-federal match to a project. That we don't see that happening very often. What we do see often, and sometimes in some of these newer discretionary projects, is a third-party in-kind donation. So this would be, and this is where we have to remember, this is a donation. So this would be donation of services possibly. So this would be like somebody would be volunteering to work on a particular project. So instead of going out and hiring somebody to do something, you get somebody that volunteers to do that work for you. Well, there's a value associated with that volunteer, and it would be not what the volunteer's profession is, but what that volunteer is actually doing. And you would have to establish what that value is. And so that would be fair market value. You would have to, and you would also have to follow the cost principle. So it's pretty, you have to follow a lot of rules in order to use the third party in-kind donation as your non-federal match. And then kind of like what I talked about, right of way, we could do donated private property or for land lawfully obtained by a state or local without federal funds. Other federal agencies, we have a few programs that allow other federal funds to be used as the non-federal match. In order to find out which programs those are, you could go to those fact sheets, or you would go to the NOFO if it was a discretionary program. And then we have what's called soft match, and that would be toll or bridge credits, which I know California has some toll credits, but if you have questions about soft match, I 100% recommend you reach out to Caltrans on that. But those are called soft match because you get a credit, so they're not. It's not actually dollars used, but there's a credit to the match that's used, and these are basically tolls earned on roadways, whether they're federally funded or not federally funded. It can be used as match to a project. So reach out to Caltrans if that's something that you're interested in, or if your program would even allow that. So now, as I mentioned, applying match to a project, our normal process is costs on federal highway projects are normally paid by reimbursement, and they're paid on what's called a progress payment basis. So as you incur the costs, you submit for federal reimbursement for the federal share of those costs as costs are incurred throughout the life of a project. And then at the very end of a project, we look and do a reconciliation, make sure that you've billed everything that you were supposed to federal highway, and then you get your final payment or final voucher for the federal share, and then we close the project. It's the easiest way to do it. It's for costs that are incurred on the project, but if there's a way that you're going to provide a match that's not cash, this is something that's not very common, but if you're going to do something that's not cash and you're going to say, for example, you do get a donation for right of way, and it's on a $100,000 project, it's $20,000, it's worth $20,000, which happens to be what your match is. If you provide that, if that's provided at the beginning of the project, you've met your match, and so the remaining $80,000 of cost that's incurred could be would be billed, and it would be like at 100% because we would pay for all the costs that are coming in because you've already met your match. So basically, you're meeting your match, or we're doing federal share on the project and not on a progress payment basis. You have to, and I'll show you in a little bit, there's steps you have to follow at Caltrans. So if you're a subrecipient of Caltrans, you're going to have to work with either your district office or the Office of Federal Resources. If you're applying for a project directly with Federal Highway Administration, you're going to have to reach out to the Federal Highway California Division Office, and Caltrans is going to have a process that they're going to have to go through, and then Federal Highway also has a process, which I'm going to show you, that you have to go through, and a lot of justification. So that's why it's much easier to use the progress payment basis. So third party in kind, this is Federal Highway's matching requirements, and I'm going to show you where you can go out and find these also. Notice here, on the slide, we have the definition for a third party. It's an entity other than a recipient or subrecipient or federal agency that's not party to a federal aid project agreement, but who may have an interest in the project. So they're not administering a project. An example might be, say, a county project benefits a city. The city is not involved in the project, but a county's doing a project and maybe it benefits the city, and the city has an interest, and maybe the city makes a donation. That they would be possibly a third party. I don't know if that's a good example for California, but that's the example I can think of. These donations can be incorporated into a federal aid project through an amendment. For discretionary programs, you should have an idea of what your matching is going to be. So if you know that there's going to be third-party in-kind donations, that should actually probably be identified at the very beginning as you're as you're executing the grant agreement, or before you execute the grant agreement, that should be communicated to Caltrans or to Federal Highway Administration, depending on who you're applying for funds with. Total contributions of cash and or donations from all non-federal sources plus the federal funds cannot exceed the total cost of the project. So if something is more than, the value is more than what the non-federal share should be, that just reduces an amount of federal funds that needs to participate in the project, and it doesn't mean that you get any extra funds, basically. Each dollar of excess donations shall reduce a like amount of federal share, basically is what I was just saying. And so if you are interested in doing something other than progress payments, then you have to have in Federal Highway Administration tapered match agreement. And so you have to follow the steps that Caltrans has. So you'd have to reach out to Caltrans if you're a subrecipient of Caltrans, and then they're going to work with you on doing a tapered match agreement. And then that, whatever they have you do, is going to be in line with what the requirements are for Federal Highway Administration. So this, as I mentioned, allows us, instead of doing individual progress payments, we can apply the non-federal matching ratio to the overall project. So federal reimbursement can range from 0 to 100% in the early stages of a project. When the project's complete, the overall federal share can't exceed the statutory federal aid limit. So if it's an 80-20 project, it can't exceed that. And it must be approved by the division administrator when approval would result in one or more of the following. Division administrator meaning Federal Highway Administration. So we would have to approve it. It's either going to result in earlier project completion, reduced tapered match, or I'm sorry, project costs would be reduced by using tapered match. It would provide for additional federal, non-federal funds possibly, or when costs for services are donated by an LPA acting as a third party or incurred by an LPA or as a subrecipient. So it's not used very often. It's out there, it's available, but if you can do cash match, that's going to be much better. So here, I'll jump out here and show you where you can find this information. So this jumps us back out to our federal website. So this is on the Federal Highway website. And this is in what's called our Federal Aid Policies Guide. And so I'm going to come back out for our main page and show you how to get there. So if you come in here to Resources, go to Policies and Guidance Center. We're just talking about financial management, but notice we can look at all the different disciplines. If you're interested in any of these, you can see all the federal highway guidance, but we're going to go to financial management, federal aid funding and grants management. Here's a lot of information on that, and I'm going to show you where we can go to our federal aid guidance, non-federal matching requirements. So this is what this link takes us out to. But this basically talks about the federal highway guidance, and I'm not going to go through all of it. And I know that I'm coming up on getting close to time for questions. But you can see this gives us a background on federal non-matching requirements and what the expectation is for the non-federal share of costs. Gives us some terminology, and I'm going to get down here to what I wanted to kind of show you and go through, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. So matching rules and requirements. So here's where it talks in more detail about general non-matching requirements, kind of what we just talked about in the slides, third-party donations, costs incurred and used and use of tapered match provisions. So what this means is you could possibly incur costs, so it wouldn't be necessarily a donation, but maybe you incur some costs as part of, like, say, the design, and you want to use those costs as matched to a project. As long as you follow proper authorization procedures, that could possibly be used as match. So, you know, you would do the design work, you would pay for that with local funds or state funds, and then that could be used as match to a future project. You would have to have a tapered match agreement, and then you would have to go through all the steps that we just talked about, and it would have to be approved. So it's, you know, done on a case-by-case rare basis, but that's another example of when you would use a tapered match agreement. If you come down here, this is what I like, and here's some specific things on some of our specific programs like recreational trails. If that's a program that you work with, there's a lot of different match requirements there that, or match flexibilities. But the thing I like is it has these examples. So you can kind of like think about, okay, if you have your actual cash outlay for projects incurred on a project, and this is for third party donations, less than the non-federal share requirement of project costs, so less than the 80-20. So we have the actual cash outlay, so that's the total cost. Value of third party in kind, 100,000, so the total cost is 1.1 million. Federal share is 80% of 1.1 is 880. Non-federal share is 220. The third party in kind can go to the non-federal share, so it basically reduces the amount of cash that is required for the project. So the 100,000 of the donation is applied to the 220, and so now 120,000 in cash is required. Third-party donations greater than the non-federal share. So we have $1 million cash outlay, $500,000 donation, so $1.5 million total project cost. The federal share is 1.2 million. The non-federal share is 300,000. So the value of the third party in kind is 500,000. The non-federal share is 300,000. So it basically makes, there's no cash outlay needed, but now the total cost of the project is 1.5 million, less the non-federal share of 300,000, less the excess in-kind donations. So we're calling those excess in-kind donations for federal share of $1 million. And this one's, and these other ones are similar. I'm not going to go through all of these because there's several, but if you have any questions on if your match is going to meet the requirements of a tapered match or do something other than just do cash match, I would highly recommend you come out and look at this guidance, federal highway guidance, and also refer to any guidance that Caltrans has, because especially if Caltrans is the pass-through entity and they're providing funds to subrecipients, you have to follow what the pass-through entity requirements are. So just wanted to give you resources on the federal side, but please, for sure, work with your Caltrans contacts. That's my slides on non-federal share and federal share. So do we open it for questions now?
Yes, thank you, Bob. We have time to maybe address a couple questions, and then if we have time at the very end of the webinar, maybe we can come back to any questions that have already been asked. Ryan and Julina, are there any questions from the audience that we can address right now?
In the chat, there's just a couple of simple questions. A couple I saw were, by definition, would all discretionary grant programs be competitive? And is the highway bridge program included in this list?
Highway bridge program in which list? I'm not sure which list.
The question was quite short. It just asked included in this list. I'm assuming the discretionary grant program list.
Yeah, let's just go out. Let's go out back out to the. So which was the what program was it that was being asked about? The highway, the bridge.
The highway bridge program.
The highway bridge program, I believe, is over. I don't know if that would be necessarily in the competitive grant funding. And to the other question, discretionary and competitive, discretionary grants are competitive grants. So yeah, that's kind of an interchangeable terminology. But the the bridge program, if you come in here to the fact sheets, we have several bridge programs. So that's why I wanted to make sure here's the bridge formula program. Here's the bridge investment program. I'm not sure exactly which bridge program and which list was being talked about, but any kind of, if it's a federal highway program, we're going to have it out on our webpage.
And then that's pretty much what I see from the chat. Sorry. I'll hand it off to Ryan for any questions with raised hands.
Okay, I'm guessing there are no raised hands.
Yeah, I'm just going through the list. I don't see any, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. This
you.
was really informative.
Thanks.
Okay. Perfect. And our next speaker is Ricky Wells with the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Great. And again, hello, my name is Ricky Wells, and I'm Policy Advisor with the Office of Transportation Policy. Since the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law in November of 2021, USDOT has been developing a number of technical assistance resources to help communities navigate the many new funding opportunities that exist to address a myriad of infrastructure needs. I'm happy to take questions at the end of my presentation. One important caveat is that I cannot speak to any specific application that you may be developing or that has been submitted to USDOT for review. If you previously submitted an application but were unsuccessful for funding, please know that you can request a debrief from the program office that manages the discretionary grant program to learn about areas of strength and weakness in your application. And just so you know, this is a great step to take if you plan to resubmit. Over the next 20 minutes, I will walk through a few key highlights of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, including to spotlight bill funding that is already being invested in California. And navigating through many different new grant programs can be overwhelming. And so we'll also talk a bit about some of the resources we've created to help find grants and track and prepare for discretionary grant opportunities. And then we will share some of the tips for successful grant applications and provide you with information on some of the department's equity screening tools. I am happy to make this presentation available to you after today, so you can have this information available to explore, or contact me or others at USDOT for any follow-up questions. So let's get into discussing some of the key elements of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is a very big deal. It provides over $1.2 million in funding, with over $660 billion in funding being overseen by USDOT. As you can see, bill funds many different types of infrastructure, from investments in air, water, and surface transportation across different modes of travel, and also in areas like electric grids, environmental resiliency and remediation, and other types of infrastructure, including storm and wastewater. Since November 2021, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law has enabled $400 billion in investments in over 40,000 projects in more than 4,500 urban, rural, and tribal communities. Significant bill funding is already flowing to California, both through the formula funding programs, but also through specific projects that have been selected for funding. As you can see, over $42 billion in funding has already been announced for projects in California. Now we'll talk about tools to find and apply for USDOT grants. USDOT launched the DOT Navigator in 2022 to provide a one-stop shop to access the myriad of technical assistance resources available across the department and to provide a library of resources to navigate the grant application process. And on the DOT Navigator homepage, you can access the technical assistance database that includes hundreds of resources on a range of topics, from civil rights and small business development to transportation planning, project delivery, and electric vehicle deployment. Technical assistance resources come in many shapes and sizes. Some are toolkits and guidance documents. Others, like our Thriving Communities or Rural and Tribal Assistance Programs, provide grant funding and targeted technical assistance. And then there are others like the Transportation Assistance Program funded by FHWA or the Rural Transportation Assistance Program funded by FTA, serve as not only clearinghouses, but they can also provide local trainings. And we update this database monthly. And if you find that you're searching for technical assistance, but not finding something that suits you specifically, you can always email us at USDOTassist, all one word, @dot.gov. Now, the DOT Discretionary Grant Dashboard, which was launched in 2023 and is a central database of all federal transportation grant programs, it also includes many available through other federal agencies. The dashboard enables you to filter your search to find grant programs that may be a good fit for a certain type of project or based upon your organization type. You can also filter to those that may provide a waiver to federal match requirements or that include tribal or rural set-asides. As outlined by Bob, most DOT grant programs require a 20% non-federal match, but some do provide waivers. The grant dashboard will help refine your search to provide a menu of grant options and links to each program where you will find more details. DOT has a page specifically devoted to the bipartisan infrastructure law, which you can access from the Navigator. On this site, you'll find a number of great resources, including spotlights of awarded projects. And you'll also find a calendar of key upcoming NOFOs, or notices of funding opportunities. This calendar is a great resource to bookmark and check to see if the projected dates for when NOFOs will be open and when applications are due. This site is also updated monthly. And again, it lists the projected NOFO openings. It contains links to grants.gov entry and also shows the application deadlines. I would like to highlight one specific program, and that is the Reconnecting Communities pilot program for FYs 24 through 26. This funding opportunity closes on September 30th. And as already stated, this NOFO will cover the next 2 fiscal years, and it includes for the first time an opportunity to apply for technical assistance for current and prospective applicants through the Reconnecting Communities Institute. The DOT Navigator includes a library of resources to help navigate the grant application process. Many of these are also translated into Spanish. If a grant program you are interested in is not currently open, you can check the program page to see information from past NOFOs that may also help you prepare for upcoming grant opportunities. The Navigator can help you find this information through the Find Funding Opportunities section. The next few slides spotlight a few Navigator tools designed to help prepare successful grant applications. On the Navigator, we've developed a number of checklists and FAQs to help decode the grant process. This includes a grant preparation checklist, which can be especially helpful to use if the grant program you are interested in is not currently open. Remember that the best grant applications are those that tell an effective, compelling, and comprehensive story that demonstrates funding need, commitment, and impact. We have also created a checklist on topics such as workforce and climate change to help think through actions that your organization may already be taking or could take as part of the project for which you are seeking funding. And both of these topics address important administration priorities that are reflected in many DOT grant programs. None of these resources supplant the important program information provided through the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, but instead are designed to supplement those program requirements. Some grant programs have additional requirements like a benefit cost analysis. Again, read the program NOFO carefully and utilize all the tools on the DOT Navigator, such as the benefit cost analysis template or project readiness checklist, to help develop your application. The person reviewing your grant application may not be familiar with your community, and using data can help tell a compelling story and provide facts that reinforce the important need and benefit the proposed project is addressing. In some instances, the program NOFO may identify specific federal data sets that can be used to inform your application. The DOT Navigator has pulled together dozens of federal data sets and has curated these according to different key topics, as you can see here on the screen. Data is a powerful tool not only in developing grant applications, but also in developing projects and informing public engagement activities. In some instances, for example, in rural or tribal communities, federal data may not fully tell the story of what is happening in your community. So checking your program's NOFO, but in almost all instances, you can supplement federal data with local and state data and with anecdotal information that also helps to paint a strong picture of the challenges, characteristics, and demographics of your community and the potential benefit that a proposed project can bring. Now, specifically for rural communities, in addition to DOT Navigator, the Rural Opportunities to Use Transportation for Economic Success initiative provides specialized support to rural communities. The initiative focuses on engaging rural communities to find transportation solutions that work within the rural context, harmonizing DOT programs in a way that aligns with the needs of rural and tribal communities, and also taking a whole of government approach by working with our federal partners to capitalize on synergies between federal funding programs. We also have our Rural Grants Applicant Toolkit that was just released this spring. This toolkit is meant to help rural applicants with understanding the federal grant process and the opportunities that are available to support rural transportation projects. It is designed for all levels of experience, so even if you have an understanding of the process, more experienced folks could benefit from some of the more technical information or learn about specific grant programs across the federal government, which we have compiled in the DOT Discretionary Grants Dashboard. So now we'll look at outside the grant application process and highlight some of the department's screening tools. So just to level set, the Justice 40 initiative is one of the primary reasons that the department developed some of its equity programs and screening tools. Executive Order 14008, Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad, established the Justice 40 initiative to confront and address decades of underinvestment in disadvantaged communities. The initiative is bringing resources to communities most impacted by climate change, pollution, and environmental hazards. DOT sees Justice 40 as an opportunity to address gaps in transportation infrastructure and public services by working towards a goal that at least 40% of the benefits from many of our grant programs and initiatives flow to disadvantaged communities. This is not a one-time investment, nor is it a single pot of money. Rather, it's a government-wide initiative that makes a series of changes to ensure benefits reach communities most in need. And now into transportation and security. As part of the Justice 40 initiative, USDOT is developing tools to assist communities in understanding the cumulative impacts that result from the lack of affordable, safe, multimodal transportation options, and how to connect components of disadvantage to the benefits projects are expected to deliver. So DOT identified transportation insecurity is a key component of transportation disadvantage. It occurs when people are unable to get to where they need to go to meet the needs of their daily life regularly, reliably, and safely. Nationally, there are well-established policies and programs that aim to address food insecurity and housing insecurity, but not transportation insecurity. DOT is working to change that, as a growing body of research indicates that transportation insecurity is a significant factor in persistent poverty. When decision makers at all levels have the tools to reverse or mitigate the causes of disadvantage, the result is a higher quality of life and economic prosperity in all communities. So many of the screening tools that we have developed can be found at DOT's Intersection Data and Equity Hub. The mission of the hub is to provide tools, metrics, and data to analyze communities' access to transportation they need and the challenges they face. The hub includes data from around USDOT on key transportation metrics, as well as several hundred fields from other agencies on demographics and transportation-related areas like health, housing, and the environment. The Variable Explorer lets users type in a search string or use categorical filters to identify fields related to their research or project. Plain language descriptions of the fields make it easy to compare the data that's available and choose the best fit. The Data Updates section provides information on data and tools from USDOT that are new. We heard from users that keeping current is one of the biggest needs. And anyone can sign up to use ArcGIS online tools, and the how-to section of the hub provides helpful explainers and tutorials that walk users through how to build different maps and visualizations. The hub also features pre-built tools, maps, and apps from around USDOT. As it grows, it will become a place to find every equity-related data tool USDOT has created. This section provides easy links to cornerstone USDOT tools like the Equitable Transportation Community Explorer, or ETC, the National Transit Map, and the National Household Travel Surveys visualization and data tools. It also provides links to data stories, dashboards, interactive visuals on a wide range of equity-related topics, and covers every mode of transportation. In that vein, USDOT created and released the first of its kind transportation-specific tool, the Equity Transportation Community Explorer, or ETC. This tool supports decision-making for how resources and programs can best uplift under-resourced and transportation disadvantaged communities. It harnesses the latest census tract data across federally available data sources to provide users a centralized, easy-to-use platform that creates visibility into drivers of transportation disadvantage. The Explorer incorporates a transportation disadvantage index that incorporates 40 plus elements across 5 categories of disadvantage, including transportation insecurity, health vulnerability, family and disaster risk burden, environmental burden, and socioeconomic vulnerability. In addition to the dashboard display of overall transportation disadvantage, pop-up boxes provide more specific data on transportation insecurity for each census tract. The user base of the ETC Explorer includes USDOT members who are interested in supporting agency-wide priorities and metrics for covered program impacts and assessing program effectiveness, applicants who can use the tools tailored insights to develop better projects based on how communities are experiencing transportation disadvantage, and explain the impacts of their projects in grant applications. I should note that I'm using the term communities in its broadest sense. The tools calculate the level of disadvantage across the 5 components at the state, county, city, MPO, project, or census tract level. And the other audience for this would be MPOs who can better understand localized impacts within specific regions to support funding decisions and provide visibility into community impact. So different features within the tool support different uses. The National Results tab allows users to see insights at a national level and understand how their project area is experiencing transportation disadvantage compared to all other census tracts nationally across the 5 disadvantaged component areas. And then the State Results tab supports localized insights for states and compares census tracts within a state. As a result, MPOs, state DOTs, and local decision makers have a tool to assist them in selecting and developing projects that impacts the areas of their state that are experiencing transportation disadvantage most acutely. This is essential in applying to Justice 40 formula programs. It is also important to note that DOT's ETC Explorer is not a binary tool indicating whether a census tract is considered disadvantaged or not. It is a dynamic tool that allows every community in the country to understand how it experiences transportation disadvantage and which transportation investments have the power to mitigate or reverse. It is designed to complement, not replace, or complement the White House's Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, or CGIST. By providing users deeper insight into the transportation disadvantage, which will help ensure the benefits of DOT's investments are addressing the transportation-related causes of disadvantage. And how to navigate the ETC. On this one, it gets pretty complicated, so generally, we strongly recommend that applicants watch the video tutorial and download the user guide on the ETC homepage. And materials here can be found in both Spanish and English. And just again, when thinking about CGIST and ETC, use CGIST to identify the disadvantaged communities, which are, we also identify those as Justice 40 communities. And then use the USDOT Equitable Transportation Community Explorer to understand how the community is experiencing transportation disadvantage. And as we close, I would like to further highlight some distinctions between CGIST and ETC. CGIST is owned by the White House Council on Economic Quality, while ETC is a tool developed by DOT. As mentioned previously, CGIST identifies disadvantaged communities under Justice 40, and the ETC provides deeper insight into transportation disadvantage and other forms of disadvantage. The ETC focuses on over 40 data elements across 5 categories and provides one cumulative score for disadvantage. And lastly, the CGIST currently relies on 2010 census tracts, while the ETC uses 2020 census tracts. And because I'm just a little over time, I just want to close out and say I appreciate Caltrans inviting us to provide an overview of some of our screening tools. As I mentioned earlier, we highly recommend you download the ETC tutorial and guide. And you can also register for the August 15th webinar for a deep dive into the ETC. The webinar will provide detailed information on how to use the tool to map a specific project area, identify how a community is experiencing disadvantage, and evaluate how project benefits may address community disadvantage. You can find the registration link through the DOT Navigator homepage or the QR code on the screen. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all these resources, Ricky. That was really helpful. Moving on to our Q&A portion, are there any questions for Ricky? And just a quick reminder, you can either post your questions into the chat or you can raise your hand to ask questions.
For the chat, there is one question. It says, for the ETC, is there a number of component scores that have to be within the disadvantage range to qualify as a disadvantaged community?
As long as so when you are using the CJEST, if you are identified as a disadvantaged community in CJEST, yes, you are considered to be a disadvantaged community in terms of in regards to the ETC.
Fantastic. And that's all the questions I see in the chat. I'll hand it off to Ryan in case there are any hands raised.
There are no hands raised.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ricky. It was great having you here. Okay, next up we have Bob Baca with Caltrans Local Assistance.
Great, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to join you this morning and share this important information. I've been asked to give a discussion on the Caltrans Local Assistance purpose and resources, focusing on the resources. So can you see my slide presentation before I get started?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right, so I will be going through this presentation fairly quickly. There is a copy of this presentation that is being provided via the chat. And if you still need a copy or are unable to get it through the chat, we can provide it afterwards. And so with that, let me go ahead and get started. My name is Bob Baca. I'm the branch chief of the Federal Infrastructure Programs branch of the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance. So what I will be going through today will be our purpose, programs, and resources that we provide through our Division of Local Assistance. I understand we have a very large audience, several hundred people, and this audience has varying degrees of knowledge. And so I plan on sharing a lot of different points of information. And so hopefully there'll be something in this presentation that you'll be able to, that you'll learn that you didn't know and be able to utilize in your job. So with that, let's go to our first part of this presentation. Let's talk about purpose. Okay, what is the purpose of the Local Assistance Division? Okay, there are two parts of local assistance. We have district offices and then we have a headquarters office. But why do we have a local assistance division? So the Caltrans Local Assistance really has a twofold purpose. We have a mission to, and you can read the mission statement there, but we also have a stewardship. So I'm going to just paraphrase this. I won't do a lot of reading off the slides. Excuse me. I know that you can read the slides, particularly in your own free time, but I will do a lot of summarizing. So in a nutshell, we at Local Assistance, our goal is to maximize funds to local agencies and others within the state, and but also to assure the funds are being utilized properly in accordance with federal laws, regulation, policies, and procedures. We represent the front end of FHWA in the administration of many of these programs, but our other part of our mission is to also help local agencies be able to secure and keep these federal funds for their transportation projects. Okay, so here we have all that sweet federal cash, and how do we get that to the projects and roads that need that money? So local agencies definitely have this need, and so this cash gets passed by Congress and goes to FHWA. Well, Caltrans Local Assistance is the liaison between the federal government and the local agencies. Why do we need this liaison? Well, as in most things in life, nothing comes free, and this cash comes with a lot of requirements, depending on the funding program and what was legislated as part of passage of those funds as requirements, as well as other laws that come into play with the administration of the projects. So we have the Code of Federal Regulations, and of course we have, in addition to the federal laws and regulations, we have California laws that also have a part in this. And so that results in a lot of red tape, a lot of regulations, and it can be difficult to know what to do and how to get through all these regulations successfully. So we have the sweet federal cash and also state cash, and we have the regional and local agencies and other grantees. So how do we get this to the regional and local agencies? Well, as I mentioned, there's these requirements that come attached to the funding, and local agencies often have a high turnover, some of the local agencies, but also these regulations are constantly changing. And so there needs to be somebody that's up on these regulations and able to assist local agencies with getting through these successfully, so that they can not only secure their funds, but also keep them if they get audited or when they get audited. Audits happen, and they seem to be fairly frequent. So we definitely want to make it so that local agencies and grant awardees are able to successfully get through those audits when they come. So that's the role that Caltrans Local Assistance plays in the administration of the FHWA federal grants, but also state cash and state grant programs. So the FHWA Division of Local Assistance really has a threefold mission, which is to administer these programs on behalf of FHWA, but streamline them and always look for ways to improve them, to help local agencies with their projects, track these projects, help with deadlines and those sort of things. And then also to look at the performance of the particular programs and local agencies to see where we can find room, places for improvement. So that's the purpose of the local assistance, Caltrans Local Assistance Division and district offices in a nutshell. So we'll go ahead and move on to the programs that we administer from our local assistance office. So we have many programs, they have different funding levels. And so I am just going to be very brief on this. We could spend a week, actually we could spend longer than a week, just going over every individual program that we administer from local assistance. But we'll give you a list here and give you places you can go to get more information on this in this presentation. So we have the Office of Federal Programs, which is an office within the Division of Local Assistance. The Division of Local Assistance we often refer to as Caltrans headquarters or local assistance headquarters. And that's kind of a central hub in the state where the program managers that develop the guidance and procedures that will help California, state and federal agencies and local, not federal, California state agencies, and more specifically the local agencies and other grantees like tribes, NPOs, RTPAs. We now have nonprofits and even private entities where they can go to, this guidance they can follow to be able to successfully execute the grants and deliver their projects. So here's a list of programs from the Office of Federal Programs. And my branch is the Federal Infrastructure Programs branch, is a subset of this office. And so for my branch, we actually administer a large portion of these projects, and we're constantly learning of new projects or new programs that are coming available. And so we communicate that out. We work with FHWA to get information on it so that we can develop guidance and procedures and get the information out. We also provide information on grants and when they're going to be, when the NOFOs, notice of funding opportunities, are out, or solicitations, that sort of thing. So these are the active programs that we have in the Office of Federal Programs, but we also have legacy programs. A legacy program are programs that are no longer funding new projects, but they do have active projects that have received funding, and we're just working with those local agencies and project managers to get those projects to completion and close out before we close out the program. So here's a list of some of our legacy programs, and for our more information on these, you'll see these boxes here on these slides. These are the web addresses that you can type in and go to and find links to these to get more information. Well, in addition to our federal programs office, we also have a Office of State Programs, and they administer the state funding programs. So this includes the STIP, the ATP program, and many other programs, as you can see here. And they also have several legacy programs that they administer as well, and those you'll see listed. But wait, there's more. We also have the Office of Innovative Programs. And so that office has two programs that they administer, and these are programs that need special attention. So we have the Clean California grant program, and they also administer the Reconnecting Communities Highway to Boulevards program. And so this Reconnecting Communities Highways to Boulevard program, they're actually, the Reconnecting Communities program is a federal program, which is administered by my office, but it received, one cycle of that program received a state match. And so that state match came with, of course, state requirements. And so those requirements and the state portion of those projects of that funding is managed through the Innovative Programs Office. So here's a link to their website. It's a fantastic website. And if you have interest or projects in those, definitely want to go visit that website. So those are briefly the programs and where to find more information on those. But now let's really dig into the crux of what I want to present to you today, and that's the resources. So I am just going to touch on the tip of the iceberg of the resources. We could be here till fall if I were to do a real comprehensive presentation on all the resources that are available to local agencies and grant applicants. Excuse me. But I will give you some basics as well as some a little more in-depth places that you might not be aware of as far as where you can go to get resources on these grant programs and funding programs that are administered by the Division of Local Assistance. Okay, so first of all, you'll want to be familiar with the Caltrans districts and which district your local agency or entity resides in. Because within your district, there's a Caltrans district office, and within that district office, there's a district local assistance office. And that district local assistance office will help you with any questions you have on these federal aid or state funded grants that are administered through the Division of Local Assistance. And this is your point of contact as a grant recipient or even a grant applicant. You can go to these offices and they will help you find the information. They'll provide you answers, or if they don't know the answers, they'll find the answers and get those answers back to you. And if they don't know the answers, then they reach out to the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance, which, as I mentioned, is Caltrans Local Assistance Headquarters, which is located in Sacramento. And that's where the program managers reside in the offices that do more in-depth things such as the processing of requests for authorization, auditing, construction management, and bigger things that we need to coordinate statewide. Okay, so this is generally the process for gathering information for local public agencies. So you may ask, where can I find my district local assistance office contact information? Well, here's the web location, and on that location you find this web page that has every district and the current local assistance, what we call the district local assistance engineer, and that's really the senior of the supervisor of the Office of Local Assistance. So they or their staff will get back to you and work with you to answer your questions and help you with your grant projects. Okay. So some of the subject matter experts that are available to you through the District Local Assistance Office is you'll find environmental specialists, and this includes archaeologists, biologists, hazardous waste specialists, and others that you may not have as part of your local agency, but you may need that expertise to get through the NEPA document that's required for your federally funded project. And so you can get assistance and guidance from those specialists in the district office. They also have right-of-way specialists that will help with right-of-way questions, and they also will approve your right-of-way certifications. Of course, I mentioned the district local assistance engineers that are presiding over the local assistance offices in each district. They're very knowledgeable, and most have been with local assistance for many years, and so have a lot of experience they bring to the table and can answer questions. They have a staff of local assistance engineers, and these are often divided by area. Every district office sets things up a little differently, but generally there's area engineers and you'll have one assigned to your particular area of your organization. And then there's district coordinators within the Office of Local Assistance, and these are specialists within that office. Often they have a dual role as an area engineer, but they will be an expert in, say, emergency relief program, or they'll be an expert in the ATP program. And so those are available from the district office as well. In headquarters for Caltrans local assistance offices, and when the district is unable to resolve things and needs headquarters input or more in-depth specialists, you'll find at headquarters grant program specialists. So these are grant managers that manage the grant programs and set up the process and procedures for the grant programs in alignment with FHWA process and procedures, as well as our own process and procedures. And I'll talk about those in a minute. We also have the engineering specialists, like construction engineers that will come out and help look at the books for a project going into construction if to make sure your books are set up correctly and help give guidance in that, or contracts. Local programs accounting has a lot of expertise, and they actually do the payment of the invoices. ADA, DBE, Title VI liaisons, as well as transit grant and, of course, contract specialists, as I mentioned. So lots of subject matter experts available to local agencies and others that are working with these grant projects. In addition to these subject matter experts, we of course have our local assistance, Division of Local Assistance website. So on this website, you'll find links to programs that we manage, and it has the state procedures and links to more information. And I'll get into more of the information you find on those a little later. But we also have manuals and guidance and all sorts of information on this webpage. So this is a link that you'll definitely want to bookmark and visit and explore, because there's a lot of very valuable information there that will help you successfully navigate the ins and outs of your specific grant program. As I mentioned, one of the links on that page is our manuals. And so under the guidelines and procedures subsection on that page, and when you click on that link, it'll take you to this web page here. You'll find the Local Assistance Procedures Manual, which is an outline and guidance for how to navigate the federal aid process for your federally funded projects. And it's basically the general process, and then program-specific things that you need to be concerned with are found on the program pages, but also local assistance program guidelines. So a number of our federal funded programs have specific guidelines and guidance for the specific grant program, and you'll find that in the local assistance program guidelines. The standard environmental reference, which is guidelines through the NEPA process, and then other things such as contract manager reference guide and more. So something to definitely explore, be aware of, and things that you will need to use as you administer your grant program, or not program, but project. And then a shout out to FHWA. I know we had some prior FHWA and US DOT Office Secretary of Transportation presenters, and some of the information that they provided, you know, while all the information they provided was good. So I won't repeat that here, but two manuals that you can search on Google and go right to are A Guide to Federal Aid Highway Programs, which gives you a list of all the active federal aid projects, and it's not updated with the latest, but it's got most of the programs in there, and it goes into a lot of good, just concise information. It's a great reference. So definitely check that out. And then we have the Contract Core Curriculum Manual. So if you're administering a federal project, federally funded project, this gives you a lot of information, particularly with contracts and FHWA requirements during construction, and very good. It's an excellent reference. Okay, so I'm going to speed up a little bit here. We've got the blogs and other information on our local assistance webpage. You can link to the blogs. You can also sign up to receive blogs. Again, we have the contact information for the district local assistance engineers. You can add yourself or your email address to an email contact list. So when there's important information, we send it out to whoever's on that email contact list. So something you'll want to be part of. I believe well, I know the blog, and sometimes through the email contact list, or many times they'll announce open calls for projects. So definitely check those out, as well as there's many other links on there. But wait, there's more. Training and resources. We have several universities that we've local assistance works with to provide training, and this training's on demand or in person or otherwise. And so we've got Berkeley, of course, Long Beach, and Sac State. I think it's Sac State. CSU, Long Beach, and then Sacramento State, yes. And so each of them have their own programs there that they administer. They provide training, and we set up and actually set up contracts so that they can put together these training courses and provide them to local agencies. So very good resource there. And these are all linked on our local assistance webpage. Okay. Some of these training and webinars available, at least as of June. I just put a list here. You can check it out at your leisure. And there's the web link. Oh, wait, there's more. Through, I believe it's CalTap, which is one of these universities. They actually have a equipment loan program and available for rental by local public agencies are reflectometers, sorry, and of course the Stripe Master 2. So if you're doing striping or signage and need this equipment and don't have it, you can check it out or rent it from CalTap, and there's the contact information and also a link so you can find more information on that. Let's talk briefly about project monitoring. Through our local assistance webpage, there's several different places you can go to get different types of information to monitor your projects. So this includes inactive projects, project end date tracking, and that's what's shown here. This is actually an Excel spreadsheet that's available through a link, and you can look up your agency and get a lot of information on your active projects and where they are. And if they have an end date that needs to be updated. So I'm not going to go through all the types of reports and monitoring here. I'll let you review that, but lots of different things to keep your project on track and on time. So in addition to this, we also have, excuse me, other links that help you with program and project management. So this includes AB 1012 balance reports, CMAQ activity reports, and RSTB, STBGB, or GP, I mean, activity reports, cooperative work agreements, and Formula OA funds delivery reports. And these are particularly useful to MPOs and RTPAs, but counties and local agencies can reference them as well. It helps in tracking how much has been obligated of formula funds and how much is left. So check those out. But wait, there's more. We actually have project monitoring on many of our federal program sites, and we're striving to get this on all our federal program sites as we're getting these set up. We plan on having what projects have been awarded funding, and then put up which ones have been obligated, what the obligation deadline is, and which ones have not yet been obligated. So this will help local agencies with these different funding programs with projects coming from these programs, track and help them in knowing where they are as far as getting their projects funded. But also RTPAs and MPOs can track them and see if an agency is really struggling to get their obligation in, and maybe provide them additional assistance if needed to get those obligated. We also plan on doing expenditures at some point. Those deadlines are further out, of course. So many of these sites don't have expenditures yet, but that's a something to be that we'll be working on in the future as well. Okay. I did want to mention FHWA does have training, of course, on demand and webinar broadcasts. Also, FHWA often will participate, the California division and headquarters, their program managers will participate in Caltrans training that we offer when we do our training, or they'll participate in little mini trainings that we set up. So that's something that FHWA California division and FHWA in general really helps us with. And FHWA is just a great organization to work with, and they provide a lot of resources and a lot of help. And they're really interested in helping us get these projects delivered as well. So it's something that when we run into problems, we include them, and they help us find a solution when there's a problem that we can't get through just on the California side. FHWA is really a great organization. So in that, I did want to mention one site, and I don't think this came up. This site goes really, this page that I came across is very, very useful. So it's the Core Highway Topics page. And on this page, you can click on these links, and you'll see the core topics on the side there. But it'll take you down through these links, and you can get access to design manuals, grant program information, just all sorts of information is available through this page. I was very impressed as I went and explored a few of these links, but it would take probably a week to go through all the links and explain all of them. But definitely a site to check out for FHWA. A shout out to them for this tremendous site. Now, for those looking for new funding opportunities, there is the federal grants portal. This is grants.gov, and most of the federal grants are being advertised through Notice of Funding Opportunities through grants.gov. And so this is a site to keep on your radar. You can go in here and search for the specific grant, find out information on what's required, what's needed, how to apply, and you actually apply through this grant portal website. One thing I did find really nice about this site, of many things, is that the site actually provides a training on how to apply for grants. And so it was set up for those that were brand new, but also those that were veterans on how they can improve grants. And so definitely a site to explore and look at. Not to be left out, California also has its own version of grants portal, and actually Caltrans grant portal preceded the FHWA grants portal. It's not as comprehensive, but it does have a lot of programs in there, particularly state-funded programs that you won't find in the FHWA grants.gov website. So check out the California website as well, and they also have a lot of information on how to apply for grants. So with that, I will go ahead and end this presentation, but in summary, as Caltrans local assistants, we're here to work together with FHWA and local agencies and other applicants to help secure funding and deliver your projects. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you in the future on your grant projects.
Thank you, Bob. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we will be skipping Q&A. If you have any questions for Bob, post them in the chat box and we will follow up with you. Okay, and now we are on our last agenda item. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, next steps and adjournment. Just a little refresher, today's meeting is part of a webinar series with 2 future sessions left. In our next Federal Grants 101 session, speakers from the federal government and Caltrans will teach us about benefit cost analysis, and this will be happening in fall. And finally, our last session in winter will be about what happens after getting an award, how Caltrans can assist you, and some successful applicants currently going through the process. For next steps, I will be sending out our presentation materials via email, and they will also be shared on our website. Then we will be uploading the recording of today's webinar later today. And lastly, we do not have meeting dates for the future Federal Grants 101 webinar sessions locked in yet, but I would like to send you meeting invites to the future sessions once they have been established. And just like last time, there will be a survey after this meeting ends that should open up automatically on your end. And one of the questions is if you would like to receive invites to our upcoming 2 webinars. And obviously, you're also welcome to reach out to me directly to let me know if you do not want to receive those invites. And before we leave, here's just a quick reminder of a few resources available to you. Obviously, we just heard our speakers talk at length about some of these, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I will just mention if you have not signed up for our IJA newsletter yet, you can use your phone's camera to scan the QR code on the slide to sign up, and we will also post all of the links into the chat. And lastly, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording.